Quiet quitting. This is a phrase that we're hearing so much during this day and age, especially during the pandemic and after the pandemic. It is really a phrase that talks about the disengagement of members of staff working for specific organizations, because people, quite frankly, are fed up. People can't be bothered. People don't want to be in a position where they're being treated toxically. I mean, sometimes people act like work is just work, but the reality is it isn't just work. You are spending, I don't know, a minimum of 30 hours if you're lucky, anywhere to like 70, 80, 90, in some cases 100 hours. That's insane. Whether it's Monday to Friday, Monday to Saturday, Monday to Sunday, depending on whether you're the sort of person who takes work home or not. Why has this happened? Now, let's be very specific here. We live in a capitalist society, and capitalism is not necessarily the issue. Capitalism being the thing where there are open markets where individuals, businesses, whatever it may be, I guess compete for the attention of the market, of the people who are looking to buy from those individuals. But capitalism in its best form works well when we as individuals, we as custodians of the world, act with integrity, so to speak. And that is putting well-being at the heart of anything else as opposed to just pure profit. It is the fact that things are getting more efficient, more productive. AI is taken over in many different cases. There is a focus on generating increased profits to satisfy stakeholders and shareholders. So really the focus has shifted, and there isn't the capacity to cover the squeeze that people are, really experiencing in the West at the moment. We've already got the other parts of the world that are in difficult situations. We, the bold West, who are going out trying to proclaim and, sanctify other nations to follow our way, are suffering in our own rights. And this is what is causing quiet quitting. I did a YouTube video, the other day, and it was based on contractors need to build their own portfolio career. Okay, so as you can see here, and essentially there are these main points that I want to focus on. Okay, so these main points are here: the rise of AI and automation, toxic work cultures and poor leadership, the great resignation, the increasing gig economy. This is why I talk about contracting so much and consulting and all that kind of stuff. The cost of living crisis, which we're going through right now. The need for organizations to spend less over time. This is everything I've just really mentioned. If you want to check this out, you can check it out on my website, michaeltabirade.com. This is everything that's happening. And so when we think about all of this stuff, all of these threats, because of the way we're utilizing this stuff, it becomes apparent that we won't engage, actually. Why would we engage with stuff that doesn't feel aligned to us? Previously I spoke about breaking out of the burnout cycle. And this is a contributor to that, or it's almost a cousin to that topic, because you really can't be asked. And it's really hard to move on unless what you're facing is addressed. Okay? You have to be able to address it. Like, if people talk about the situation, you may act a bit avoidant. If people talk about how's work going on, you don't really say much because it ain't great. You're not feeling it. And it's even worse, okay? And I know I feel this, okay? When I used to sort of work a permanent 9 to 5, it doesn't really matter. Every single job will be the same to some end. Now, not everyone will have that experience, but there are many people who feel like that. They feel like, oh gosh, it doesn't matter if I move. What's the point? And so this is where this whole idea of quiet quitting came into play. Okay. Now, the reason why people quiet quit as opposed to just quit is because of that reason I just highlighted. They kind of continue working in this place or space because they feel like nothing will ever change. Nothing will ever change either in this organization or in another one. And I can understand that mentality. If anything, there have been times where I've done that myself. You got bills to pay. You got a child to feed. You got a partner to look after, guy or girl. There are all these things that are involved. So it's kind of like, I just need to shut up and dribble, as they said to LeBron James. And unfortunately, in some circumstances, That has to be the strategy for a bit. But for others, there are options that we can take. But before I get into any of those potential options, it just frustrates me when leaders and managers don't realize how much of an impact they have on their workforce. Like, you need to take the softer skills more seriously. I'll say this again and again and again. Leadership defines or makes a difference when it comes to culture. It creates the culture. Yes, culture is defined in many ways in terms of, policy and procedure and process and all this kind of stuff there. We get it. But it's the behaviors, especially from the leaders, those who are leaders by default especially, who determine the theme and the flavor. And sometimes you may not have a default sort of leadership position, but you are affecting somebody else. It pays to be kind, I'm telling you. There have unfortunately been individuals who have committed or ended their lives because of the effects of harassment, bullying, poor communication style, poor collaboration and working together, not acknowledging the well-being of individuals. And it really takes the right sort of people to prevent this stuff from happening. You may not completely solve quiet quitting, but at the end of the day, you'll be in a position where you are more likely going to have people who engage with you. I remember when I used to work in an organization, the culture was toxic. It was terrible. And I was quiet quitting for months. This was not recognizable by me by any means. And the reason I was quiet quitting was because I felt I had no one to really talk to. I felt like my issues couldn't be addressed. I felt like if I asked questions, I felt stupid because of the way people responded to me. And I was quite young. But I quiet quit because I was like, I don't have any other options right now. I felt like I didn't have any options. That wasn't true. But that's how I felt. And so I can sympathize and empathize with people in this position. And so these are ways in which you've quiet quit. 1, if you can't be bothered. 2, if you're avoiding work, you're just kind of moving the mouse. Okay, we all do. We don't have to quiet quit to do that. Sometimes we just move the mouse. Okay. 3, if it feels like, I guess there's a decrease in productivity. So for example, there may have been a project that you may have been very enthusiastic in getting involved with, but you just can't be bothered, man. It's just long. People are complaining. People are moaning. Nobody wants to make change. Maybe you get a bit done in the morning, but for the rest of the day or the afternoon, it's just like, that's long. I can't be bothered. What? Why would I do it? No, sometimes you may be in situations where you're so avoidant, you're absent. It's called absenteeism. I've done this before. If I knew back in the day that X person was going to be at a certain meeting, to avoid any sort of confrontation or energy or whatever it may be, I just wouldn't turn up. What's the big deal after all? They're not going to say anything anyway. It's hard to get rid of someone. Look, I don't want to give you this sort of image that I was bad. No, I'm a pretty good worker, okay? But there have been some situations where I have been unrecognizable because of the environment that's been created. And I want you to understand this. Environment is everything. Environment is everything when it comes to this stuff, just in general. And that environment is heavily made up by people. So yeah, this is what ends up happening. And look, you may be someone who doesn't go to work socials and stuff. I mean, that's totally up to you. I think, do it within reason as long as you're sensible. But maybe you start avoiding colleagues and workers and all this kind of stuff because you've quit in your mind. Your mind is elsewhere. Maybe you're thinking about, how am I going to be financially free? How am I going to create a sense of autonomy? How am I going to master X? For some of you who are versed within this space, you would have realized I use the factors of drive from Daniel H. Pink. So mastery, autonomy, and having a sense of purpose. How can I really experience all of this stuff? So, like I said to you before, you may be in these situations, but you have to find ways to navigate this. And I'm going to start talking about this stuff. But before I do, there are some negative impacts that you can have when it comes to quiet quitting. Like, you naturally become burnt out. I spoke about that before, so check out that video. Burnout is really where you have a clash in values, or you just have a loss of energy towards or directed towards a project, a purpose, whatever you're doing. You're just not there. You may be more anxious, so just a bit more jittery by nature, or stressed, okay? And stress really is onset again by environment. So if this was in my environment, it was making me stress. If I remove it, I'm less likely going to be stressed. So there is something specific in your environment that makes you feel this way. And so this is why it's important to like move into a space where you're less likely to act this way. You're gonna not really care about work in general, and you're gonna be at a crossroads where it's kind of like, how do I get out of this rut? I need money. I don't have any entrepreneurial skills yet. I'm scared to go contracting because I don't want to quit. How do I deal with this? These become the issues. These become the problems that you're facing. And so even to the organization, I don't want to talk about organization too much. I want to make this very individual focused. There's going to be a whole bunch of issues happening with them. We're seeing it right now. There are less people. The more talented people are running away. Even the less talented people are running away, or even they hang around. You know, it's hard to lead. Things are becoming more ambiguous and complex. When it comes to expertise, that's not being kept in-house because people are running off. The organizations make money. They may crumble or fold, or may merge or be acquired by other individuals or organizations. Just the overall performance is lacking. So if this is stemming from pressure that's being created, not necessarily initially due to lack of capacity, but due to the overall strategy and the operations, it's doomed for failure. It was always going to fail eventually. They're not playing the infinite game that Simon Sinek talks about. They're playing the finite game. People cannot be treated like cattle. They can't be. They need to be treated with respect. And so it's no wonder why people quit. Now, it's important to understand that quiet quitting needs to be addressed, okay? And the best way to address this is to have an environment that is conducive to a bit of challenge, but also support as well. What do I mean by this? You may have heard of the term psychological safety. This is something that's badged around within the well-being space a lot. And all that really talks about is the ability to create an environment or a space or conditions that enable people to feel secure and safe. They can be the authentic self, or as close to their authentic self as possible. They don't need to consistently self-monitor and think, oh, should I say this? Should I say that? They can just be. And the reason why I talk about support and challenge is because these two factors are the things that create psychological safety, or create a space of safety, so to speak, where you can learn and grow and thrive. However, if you just have one or the other, there are problems. So what I mean by this is, if you just create a safe environment, you could be complacent and you may not be bothered because there's no drive, there's nothing pushing you. If you just have challenge all the time, you may feel scrutinized and belittled and felt like you were lesser than you actually are. And so really, when you have two working together, okay, then you create the environments and conditions for growth. And as leaders, it's about creating spaces that enable that to happen. But it needs to be done in a way where people don't feel like that if they do express themselves, they're going to be punished for it. And so maybe you need independent bodies from other teams or other organizations potentially that can support this. Maybe you need individuals who act as mentors, ambassadors, or coaches who can talk to people privately one-to-one, where a private setup is created for that person, yourself, and those people who are helping out. Maybe there needs to be forums or workspaces or groups that cater towards this quiet quitting. But the organization needs to be able to gain feedback on this. And so, and this takes a lot, because most people can't be bothered to do this. If you feel trapped and you feel like there is no other option, you've got two options. You don't do anything and you stay in your position, or you do something about it, assuming you don't just quit, okay? I know this video says, quiet quitting, it's time to go. But that go could mean so many things. It could mean get out of there, or it could mean you start making strides to change the environment. The latter is harder to do. That's the reality of the situation. And you may experience this quiet quitting in another place. But these are sort of suggestions that I'm talking about right now, just in case you're looking to hang around and stay. So those are some things you can do. Now, this isn't a PDP situation where you need to do a professional development plan or anything like that. This is about allowing people to feel heard. And this is about trying to find solutions to solve things. Sometimes you quite quit because of one person. There's one, I'm not even going to say the word. There's one D manager, D head manager, who is just taking the biscuit. They're the ones making your life a living hell. And it's because they haven't understood the type of person you are. They haven't really understood your temperament. Maybe you are using disc profiling as an example. Maybe you're quite dominant as a person, okay? So this is like red energy. Maybe you're somebody who is not like that. You're a bit more calculated, okay? And you need sort of like people to explain things into detail and everything else. Maybe you're somebody who's a bit more social by nature, okay? And it takes some time for you to, again, learn things. And maybe you're somebody who's a bit more nurturing by nature, okay? So this stands for dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness, okay? So these are all the different things. Though that's one type of example anyway. Anyway, that's besides the point. Let's keep it moving with this whole topic. So essentially, if you're going to take on this role in trying to, again, create this environment of psychological safety, you need to kind of take it seriously. And maybe you need to be the ambassador. Maybe you need to get other people involved. Maybe you've got a mental health network that you can link to. Maybe you've got a coaching and mentoring network that you can link to. Maybe you've got other enthusiastic people who are feeling the same way. It's difficult, man, especially when you got people on your back. But sometimes, my friends, sometimes the reality is to leave. Amongst everything else, your mental health, your physical health is very important. That can't be ignored at all. And we're acting like it should be ignored. Am I saying this is better within the contracting space? No, not necessarily. You may feel like you quite quit in contracting, but the beauty of contracting is that, number one, you can leave whenever you want. Number two, you get paid better. Now, it doesn't make it easier. It always depends on the culture and the environment and the leaders that you're speaking to. But essentially, it is a different option. And I use the contracting sort of like focus because you have to remember that we're moving into a world that is focusing more on portfolio careers, i.e. creating your career path as opposed to pursuing one. So if you're in a space where quiet quitting has become apparent and you are pursuing a career, maybe it's time to start thinking about how can you dismantle your beliefs that are holding you back and find ways to create your career. Maybe contracting is something you can do. Possibly you can go part-time and do something else. Maybe you hone in more in the volunteering side. Possibly you do other things to manage your mind, so to speak. Whatever it is, it's not easy. But I want you to know that it's possible. And this video is purely a reminder to say, I empathize with you. I see where you're at. I've been there before. Just hang in there and focus on what's truly important to you. Because once you start making decisions that are truly important to you, then your life starts to blossom. Anywho, if you want to see more videos like this, tailored around portfolio careers, life management, and positive psychology, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.